You good? All righty. Well, hello, everybody. Everybody having a good DerbyCon so far? It's sad it's almost over with. Just really quickly, though, just want to ask you, how many here are currently in a higher education program, whether that's a 2-year, 4-year university kind of a thing? Okay. How many of you work in like the educational industry then and kind of, all right. Anyone here have competed in a cyber defense competition before? Wow, we got quite a few. Anyone competing the coming up year? Okay, all right. So welcome to my presentation on getting started in CCDC. Just a little bit about me. A few years ago, I was in an industry that I wasn't too happy with, so I decided to make a change, go back to school, figure something out, figure something different out, got into more in the side of system admin kind of a thing, and as that program was going on and on, I got more interested into the security side of it. So changed a little bit there, went into that. For the last 5 years, I've been doing InfoSec stuff in my job. When I graduated from college, I then turned around and went back to college, but I taught mostly as part of their risk management program for a little bit on that. Mainly a blue team, so it's mainly what I do. I don't focus on a lot of the red teaming or anything there when it comes to that. And so currently that's where I am. Getting into CCDC when I was in school, you know, we had a group that was going on. They would come into our classes every quarter or so and go, hey, you know what, we've got this great thing going on, you know, you want to do it, you want to be part of it. I always sat there in my seat, you know, first couple of years going, well, you know, it sounds great and all, but I got a job, I got a family, you know, I got schoolwork to do, I don't want to get involved. So finally they wore me down. You know, about 2 years left of school, I got involved. With that, we then competed in a couple of the regional competitions, and then we actually got to compete in one of the national competitions too as well. So it was a good time. Some of the things that I'm going to be going over is I want to give you guys a better understanding of what CCDC is, the importance of it. Even if you're not in school, there's an importance to it and getting involved into that community. I'm going to go over some of the things that we did to set up our environment. Now, the school that we were in wasn't very supportive of putting money into it. They were supportive of us doing it, but we kind of had to do everything ourselves. So, you know, kind of hodgepodging things together. So we'll kind of go over what we did to do that. Talk about some of the tools that we used. You know, in the competition, you could only do certain things. So I'm going to go over that. How we ran our practices, that kind of helped us out too as well when it comes into it. And then I got a couple of little stories, you know, about things that happened while we were there that I'm going to share with you guys as well during this. So whether you're going to school or not, why is it important to get into the CCDC and take part of it? Well, there's a couple things. So if you're in school, some of the things you do get out of it is you gain experience in the field. One of the things is a lot of universities will teach us a lot of theory, things like that, and during that theory and things, there's not a real lot of way we can put this knowledge, you know, practical knowledge out there and learn, you know, what's going on, you know, how it really works. So the big thing is it throws you in an environment where you actually get to practice some of that stuff. Teaches you new skills. So, you know, there's so much going on in the competition, so many different areas, you know, you could focus in a new area that they might not be teaching you in school. You know, get into Linux if you're not a big Linux guy, you know, get into other parts of Windows, you know, develop new things, you know, over your course of you getting ready and preparing for that competition to do these different things. And one of the big things that it taught me in there was how to work with teams. You know, now that I'm in the industry, I work with a lot of different teams, whether that's executive management people, whether that's other people in the, you know, security area or that, and it's hard to kind of, if you haven't had that experience, to work with these different people. A lot of us think, you know, hey, I'm just going to go and do it myself. It's easier if I do it myself, but there's a lot of collaboration that goes on. So it teaches us that teamwork and how that we can build that and how that works together, you know, in accomplishing our jobs and things like that. If you are not in school but want to get involved in things, the things that it helps out and why it's important is we get to share and pass on our knowledge. You know, some things that these people, and we didn't understand too while we were doing the competition, is just different areas. You know, they only would teach you certain things in school. You know, we would learn on Cisco routers, but, you know, hey, we hear they might be using Juniper or they might be using this. So for us, especially when we went to nationals, we reached out to the community and said, hey, look what we did. We're going to this competition, but we don't feel prepared at all. We don't know what they're going to throw at us. We don't know anything about Solaris or anything like that. So we contacted out in the industry, and we got a few people coming back. They'd come to practice and teach us a little bit. But it's important for us to get involved that way if we're not in school. You'll find out what teams are out there. Even if it's a high school that's doing certain things, getting involved with that is great to pass on that knowledge. Also, it helps build the community. And kind of what I mean by that is I've heard quite a bit over this conference, was talking with people and stuff, that in our industry, it's not, like, hey, a lot of kids go to school, they want to be doctors, they want to be lawyers, they want to make a lot of money. There's not a lot of glamour and blue side, kind of stuff. But if we can get out there and show how fun it is, how it's important to, even high schools, lower grades, the college students and things like that, it's going to build up that community, help our infrastructure build up. Where I live now, our infrastructure is hardly any. It's hard for them to find good IT people coming in. They have to bring them from other states or whatever, and then trying to get them involved, help our community grow. Companies wanting to come in, but they look at, well, what are you doing in your high schools? What are you doing here? So 5 years down the road, we're not stuck with, not that great employees. We want to see some growth in the industry. So this kind of helps too as well. Build that up, help out in the industry there too as well. Well, what is CCDC? I pulled this from the website. It's a lot of reading. I don't expect to read through it. I'll kind of break it down for you. Basically, what it turns out to be is you have a competition. It's a 2-day competition where a group of students get together. They form a team. The team is then kind of thrown into an environment. Depending on the scenario that they give you for the year, you've got going on. They'll go, okay, here you guys go. Here's a network that you guys are going to take care of, because the old IT group got fired. They all walked off the job. Maybe they're all killed. Who knows? It depends on the scenario. So here you go. Here's an environment for you guys. Have fun. What we want you to do. We want to keep it secure. You want to make sure that certain services are running. You'll be scored on those services. Keep them going. Make sure day-to-day operations are working. Along with that, there's a lot of business needs that go in, and this is something else that you're not taught in school is that business aspect of it all. CEO, board of directors may need something from you or want you to do something. They don't teach you how to do that, and the competition throws you into that. It's all of a sudden, here you go, you've got this to do. The CEO wants it done, get it done, and here you're worried about, what the red team's doing to you. You're worried about getting these other things done, making sure this is secure and all of that. So as long as this is going on too, they throw other things at you, red team doing things like trying to get physical access to your systems. So basically you go through and you try to defend your network, and you try to keep the business and the operations running into it. The competition is broken up into different regions. Here, there's about 10 regions right now. And basically how that will work, I believe most regions now have to have a qualifier to get in. When I was doing it, it was 16 teams can only compete in your region. Some regions are a little bit different. So they would run qualifiers. Qualifiers were all usually a remote. You'd remote in somewhere, you'd do some things, and then the top 16 teams would go and compete at the regionals. Then at regionals, you'd get together. They would throw you in your rooms. You would do your thing there. If you won regionals, you'd get to go compete in nationals. We were actually in the Pacific Rim region is where we competed for that. So also there's a lot of different teams that go into this CCDC competition. Yeah, things like the gold team where your officials that organize it, run it, they do all that. They put the scenarios together. So when we were competing, some of the scenarios we were the Center for Disease Control in one of them, and we had a zombie apocalypse going on. So we had to deal with, what was going on out in the world with keeping that running. Another one we were a weapons company dealing with weapon stuff, trying to keep hackers from taking over a satellite that was going rogue and nuking different cities. And then we had one where we were a power company, and we had to keep the grid on for the city. Along with that, then there's the white team. They're the ones that go around and make sure that you're following all the rules, you're doing what you're supposed to. Of course, your red team, they're there just to kill you pretty much, depending on who's trying to attack you. Blue team is, there's a competition team going in there. We had the black team. They did a lot of the, a system was down because of the environment and not because something the red team did. They would do that. Bring you documentation that the CEO or somebody wanted you to have. And along with that, we would break it down a little bit further. So each team had a captain and a co-captain, and they would be the liaison between the team and everybody else. And then our representative, or we just called him coach. Along with that, we broke it down a little further. So we had different areas. We had a Windows team and we had the Linux team. I was actually running the Windows team on it, and my job with that was I basically made sure that my guys were on task on what they were supposed to do. Any issues that came up in their systems was kind of brought to me. We would talk about it, we'd go back down, work on it, jump into other systems to help them out. My main focus was in Active Directory and also Exchange. So I dealt mainly when we had those systems on the network with dealing with those. Linux side, I'm not a big Linux guy, so I don't know what they were doing. They were all writing scripts, doing different things, having fun over on their side. So that's kind of how the breakdown on the teams and everything went on that. Your environment that you get, this is kind of hopefully you can see it there. It's different things that we would get in environments. I don't remember which competition this was. Most of everything was virtualized, so we had an ESXi servers, running everything. We would have things like Windows 8, after, Windows 2003, Server 2012 R2. They would throw different things at you to simulate a real-world environment. I mean, you might go into an environment who's still running, Server 08. You got to know how to deal with that kind of thing. They would throw on different types of switches and routers for you there too as well. And one of the fun things they'd always like to do is sometime during the competition, they may throw a Kali box on there for you. Whoever gets there first, whether it's red or blue, can gain access to it and use it for what they need to. The environments were pretty much, there's not a lot of documentation. Sometimes when you go in there, they give you, it teaches you that step of why people need to document, have procedures, things like that. You walk into the place, you sit down, and they're like, all right, here's your packet. Open up your packet, gives you a few IP addresses, main things that you might need to know, Active Directory, things like that. And you don't know everything else is on there. So you've got to kind of have to run different programs. One of the things we would do is first thing, get in there, we would run an Nmap scan. Figure out what's on your network. You can't defend it if you don't know what's on it, was our big thing on that one. And that was one of the things our coach could say all the time. He's like, I'm going to throw something on the system for you, find it. You don't know when it's going to be. And they would do this to us all the time in the competitions. They'd throw something at you, or there might be something that be missed. I mean, some of us have gone into networks, ran scans, and found boxes that we didn't even know were on anymore. So you got to find those, lock them down, get those kind of set up. Know what you're working with before you can actually do anything in the competition, because knowing is half the battle. Like I said, you get scored on different things. So this is a scoring engine from one of our competitions that we had. Basically, it breaks down, what teams there are and the different services. So depending on, what the scenario was, you'd have different things you'd have to keep up. Big things like HTTP, they would always run a website. A lot of them were e-commerce kind of things, so they wanted to make sure that those services were up and running. You'd have things like your DNS, they'd want up. FTP was a big one. They would always have something to do with a file share that you'd have to do, set up different things there. They had SSH open for different things. So depending on what they were doing, POP3 was another one. You'd have it on there. So as you can see here, at any given time during the competition, most of the time we wouldn't leave the room, so we didn't know what was going on. The coach could take a look, see where you were at. That way you can get a good yelling out afterwards, going, well, what were you guys thinking of? So you can see there in this one, there's some teams that are having some real big problems and some that aren't. But this is kind of how the scoring of everything works when it comes to it. Kind of some of the, going through the competition. So when we went to nationals, it was pretty intense. You get in the room, here's your equipment. All right, go. So we start going through our stuff that we're doing. We're feeling, somewhat okay with everything. Day's going along pretty good. We get done with the first day and go and start to talk about, hey, oh wow, that was, pretty tough. There's some things we need to work on for tomorrow. Let's start getting things together. Let's start doing things. And These are just some of the business injections. I'll go back to that here in a second. So we get out, and the coach goes, hey, did you guys see this tweet? So it's a retweet of what happened. Good old Dave Kennedy there. Sorry, Team 10. We all stopped to think for a minute. Wait a minute, we're Team 10. So then we panicked. A lot of us sat around, we were a little bit down on ourselves. Some other people went out to kind of forget the day. So then this happened. You know, probably not good, but you know, got a little bit crazy there. End of the day, the end of the competition comes. We got a good old little shout out from them at the end of everything here. One of the things we did learn as a lesson learned, just kind of to go there for a minute, is at the end of each competition, what we would try to do is we would try to find a team, the red team that you know, was attacking us, and we would go and we would have a conversation with them. You know, what did you guys do? What did you guys see? What could we have done better? There was a talk the other day that kind of talked about this too, but what it did for us is it gave us insight to some things that maybe we forgot. It's one of those things in the industry that we don't do a lot. You know, if you have an engagement that comes in and, you know, you get a report, the report comes in and you kind of just go with it. Is there ever that sit down with them? Hey, what can we do better? But that for us, that was a big thing to do, is find those guys, talk to them. They're going to give you something. They're not there to, you know, their big thing is to help you out too as well. That's what the competition is about. With that, kind of going back here just a second here to some of the business injections for some of the other things that happened. These are some of the things that we had to do. One of the big ones that we kind of didn't like as much was the taking the phone calls. Not just because it was a phone call coming into it, but a lot of times with these competitions, they're going to throw everything into it. You know, every once in a while you'll get, oh, I'm a user, I got locked out. You know, help me reset my password, or you'll get the CEO or somebody calling you what you do from it. But a lot of times it was like, you know, during the zombie apocalypse, hey, my daughter got bitten and now I locked her in the closet and she's trying to bite me. How do I help? You know, it'd be things like that, you know, help, I'm being attacked by zombies. How do I do that? You know, so we had to take the approach going in it from past competitions of, you deal with it on the same level you deal with any other kind of technical phone call. You know, let them know, hey, you know, situation, what's going on, maybe you're not the right department, move them over to the right department, and that kind of a thing. Some of the other injects you get, a lot of them website updates, so we would have CEOs making an announcement, he's going to send you something, we'll put it on the website. All right, great. Gets into some of the other little crazier things. So disaster recovery was one of them one year, where the organization decided we don't really have a great disaster recovery, so take one of your team members, have them write up a disaster recovery report, and then guess what? They get to go and present it to the board and everything like that. So it's giving you that experience too as well, of being able to go and put together some of these things that you might not be able to do and see how it works in a presentation. Network design, sometimes setting up VPNs, things like that were some of the other things that we did. Let's skip through that again. Another story here was, so when we were in the power station, or the power grid, these were cool little Raspberry Pis that they put together that helped control the network, or control the grid. So we had to keep the grid up. That was part of the services that we needed to do. So as the day is going on the second day, you know, we're feeling pretty good because, you know, we haven't seen a lot of things going on with our powers thing. You know, it's running great, you know, whatever. You know, and then all of a sudden we get a business injection coming in going, they got to do some scheduled maintenance at this certain time. So they gave us an exact time. We need you to turn the power grid off and then turn it back on 15 minutes later. Okay, great. So we start getting in there. We're going through trying to get it to go. Nothing's working. The thing won't power down. Nothing's happening. Turns out we ended up killing 15 individuals at that. Now, the other part of the story is, when it comes down to it, is Mr. Kennedy decided that he wanted to get in there and do some stuff. He ended up breaking it that it stayed on, and he broke it to the point that nobody could get back into it. So that's why our power stayed on, and we actually got quite a few points from it, from doing that. So you know, that's the other thing with the red team, is they're always in there doing crazy things. The first day of the competition, they're only allowed to do so much. So they can go in and drop, you know, their root kits, whatever they want. They can go in and get their persistence set up. They can do all that kind of stuff. But the attacking really doesn't start till the first day. So pretty much anything that the first day is something you did. Except for, on one occasion when somebody dropped in a rootkit on our AW or our AD system, and they did something crazy to it and it stopped working. So it was a constant, and we didn't know that there was an issue with it. So it was a constantly of team members yelling back and forth, hey, can you revert the AD server? Revert the AD, revert the AD. And then it turns out we find out that there was an issue that they got fixed on it later. Those are just some fun little stories that we have with the competition. Getting into the hardware and everything in the OSs that we did. So, like I said, the school we went to was great on giving us a space to use, getting us an internet connection to use, maybe paying for a little bit of our transportation. Other than that, they didn't really have a lot. So if you're in an organization like that, things that we did, so our hardware here, you can see not anything great, old HP servers. I think, no, they were Dell servers that we were using. A lot of them were donated by our work after they decommissioned them. So some of them were 10 years old at that time, but hey, they worked. So we would throw them all together, get them set up, and then we'd start loading up. Each person on their own laptop would have a virtual machine set up where they would have the different operating systems that they would need. So all us Windows people had XP, Vista, Windows 8.1. So we would have all these ones ready and available, along with the Linux side. Server-wise, like same thing. We would be having the servers 2003 through 2016 going on, through Solaris in there when we competed at nationals. Everything was virtualized, and so these were the operating systems that we would set up. Different services, so then we would make sure that we would have services that we know that they would score onto as well. Definitely, put your domain controller, have Active Directory, DNS on there. Always something with a file server, so learn that. We would set up web services. We do it both in Windows and in Linux, just because you never knew what they would throw at you. Email is the same thing, so we would have, different Linux versions of, some mail stuff, Exchange going on, different databases, SSH. We did luckily get a VoIP system. Somebody got a Cisco phone setup that we actually got to use during practices to kind of make those phone calls. So with the services, you want to try to figure out what they usually are going to throw at you, and you want to use those services as you're going through everything. Here's some of the tools that we did use. A lot of different tools, didn't put everything on there. So, like I said, Nmap was a big one. Always make sure you know what's on your environment. XNetStat Pro. Vulkan we used a little bit just to get the layout of our machines that we had. And the thing with the tools is when you go there, you can only use free tools. Anything that had a license or you had to buy was not available to you. You couldn't bring anything on a USB or anything like that as well. So you want to find tools that you can use that are free, and you want to practice with them too as well. Don't try to switch up your game and change to something else. All these tools are great. You probably have some different ones if you've competed that you're going to use. Here's a little thing of the XNet Pro that we use. Now, the reason we use this one is it was a great one to show what connections started connecting to our systems. So we'd load it up, we would watch what's going on. It would tell you, your IP address, tell you the remote host. So you kind of knew, they gave you an IP range anyway. So if anything weird was coming on, you could see it. Gives you the option then, you could kill those connections. You can nuke them so that if they pop back up, they automatically go away after that too as well. So it was a good way to kind of keep an eye and monitor, something we can kind of, minimize a little bit and keep track of what was going on, seeing what was coming into the network, see what we needed to do. That way, if something weird, even from machine to machine, I'd see somebody trying to come in on AD, do authentication or something like that. I could see that IP and then I'd go, hey, John, is that you there trying to do something on my system? Yeah, that's me. Okay. I just about killed you there. So it was a good way to look at that. The other thing we did is we had registry alert was another one that we used later on. We like this one because basically when it starts running, anything it tries to change in the registry, it can give you an alert to let you know that, hey, this is changing. Is this something you're going to do? You want to kill it? You want to let it go through. So it kind of gives you another area to look at. Another tool we used here was Spy Shelter. We use this one just for an anti-keylogger kind of a thing. It would be able to encrypt your keystrokes. That way, if they tried to throw a keylogger onto your system, you know, it would help out on that end of it. You know, they would try to do this by, a lot of times though, they would come in and they would try to do a physical attack. You know, wait till your team was doing something and somebody would sneak into the room and try to plug a USB into it, you know, or at night, you know, I guess they had access to a little bit that they could have came in and plugged in a USB. So if you didn't check out your equipment every time you got there and make sure everything looked normal, it was a way to kind of help you out and protect you on that area. We had checklists that we would run. Now, I was going to post them on here, but I decided to, you know, didn't want to give out some of our stuff that we used on it. But basically, every workstation, every server, every service that big services had a checklist. And what we would do is we would sit down a little bit before we started practicing. We'd get together as a group, you know, before we actually started the practices and kind of discuss different things that are going on in the industry. Talk about different things we've heard that can help out, and we would create these checklists for each area. So for like servers, you'd have different things. Workstations, you'd have different things. You know, workstations, you'd come in. Things that we would do is, you know, you want to make sure that these certain tools were running first thing when we got in there. We want to make sure that if the machines weren't patched, that we were running patches on them. So it would break down each thing that needed to be done. You know, Active Directory had a lot of different things in there that we would do with users. You know, check this user out. You know, check out for the golden ticket kind of thing. You know, change that password. Exchange. You know, we do different things there. Linux all had a bunch of stuff that they would do. Things, especially when it came to like web stuff like that, they went and would take a checklist. That basically one of the things they would do was take that database from the web service, take all the files, copy it to an undisclosed location on the network, create a script, create a cron job that would actually refresh all those things every hour or every 30 minutes, so that if somebody broke in, defaced the website, it's not automatically just fix it to the last known source that they had. So, you know, finding ways to automate some of that stuff was kind of one of the things that we would add into our checklists too as well. Setting up GPOs, that was a big thing that I did, and it's another thing that helps out on these areas. So we had different software restrictions we do. A lot of times in the competition, they made us do login banners, so we made that one of the things we did is first thing I got in there. Set out your lockout policies, your password complexities. We even got to the point of trying to be a little proactive and set up a Windows Update server, different things in there, you know. So find those GPOs. One of the things, you know, with that is find those GPOs that are going to help you out. Make sure they're applied to as well. You know, it's the same thing when you get to work and you're starting to work for a company. Those things that can help you out and keep you secure. When it comes to practices, so this is a picture of our group here practicing. Basically what we would do is we would set it up, we would all come together in an area so that we can look at each other and collaborate, you know, have that area set up in a great work environment. We would start practicing, well, not really start practicing, we'd get together about 6 months almost before competitions were supposed to start. Get things ready, you know, start, you know, getting the group to be friends again if we weren't, you know, get us to, you know, hang out together. The big thing was we all hung out together. You know, we created that connection so that when we were competing, you know, we would have that going forward. So when we would do practices about, like I said, 6 months before we set up, get things going, load up our OSs, everyone get together, have a little party with it, get everything kind of set up together. And maybe anywhere from 5 to 4 months prior to the competition, we practiced, and we would practice a lot. We put in, you know, 6 hours on a practice day. And how we did our practices was those checklists that we used. And it would basically be coming in to sitting down. Our coach would go, guess what? Today you're working on this OS, you're working on that OS. So it wasn't a given OS each time. So it gives us that opportunity to use the different systems. And then it would basically be, all right, go. We'd run through our checklist. It's kind of set up, we'd call it kind of like a military approach into that end, where here's your thing and you just do it. We'd run through these checklists and run through the checklist. When we got done at a specific time, we go, all right, we're going to do 45 minutes or whatever. Run through your checklist. Let's see how far you get. All right, done. Revert your systems, doing it again. Go through it, do it again. And we would do that for a while for the first few practices, things like that. You get that muscle memory in. You want to be able to get into that competition and get those things you needed to get done Because once you get in there, you get a little bit fried sometimes. You're overwhelmed with everything that's kind of in there, trying to figure out what's going on. So if you have that muscle memory, you put together those checklists, do those practices in that way, you don't have that reaction to begin with. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I've got to do this, this, or this, and you start to get those things done with those. Then as the practices get on, then we start doing a little couple of different things there. We'd have the business injections start coming in. Hey, you know, do this. Hey, here comes in a phone call. You know, start practicing those type of things later on. Those are things that you can, you know, do later on. But if you don't have those basics, it's like anything, you know, there's always a best practice. You know, we got to stay with our best practices. So these were our best practices when it came to it. Create a routine, stick to it. Basically what I'm saying when it comes to it. You know, find a routine that's going to work for you guys and do it. Continue to do it. Practice, and then some more practice, you know. All you got to do. You know, add the shampoo, lather, and rinse. You got to keep doing it. It's going to build into you, you know, the things that need to get done. You're going to know the important things of the things you're doing when you get there. And last kind of thing here to kind of wrap up a little bit is just get involved. You know, like I said before earlier, we all need to get involved somehow. Whether we're in school and they don't have a CCDC competition, you know, try to get one set up. If you're in the industry, you know, go around, talk to schools, you know, see what you can do to get things going on it. It's a good way to build up the community. It's a fun competition if you haven't competed before. It's very worth it. It's very stressful. But at the end of the day, you know, you learn a lot. You gain a lot of knowledge. You gain stuff that you can take out. It's going to help you in the world when you go out and you start getting your education. This is kind of all I have here. If you got any questions, you know, let me know. Yeah. It's on well, it all depends. It's usually a weekend, so they would do a Friday, Saturday kind of a thing. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday would usually be an awards ceremony, things like that. Anybody else have any other questions, concerns? Anything they want to bring up? Awesome. So thank you guys all for coming out. You know, if you have anything else you want to talk to me, come up. Let me know.